reflection for FMP and idea generation for final pieces and stuff. So, and it's like a bit of a sketchbook, flip through random stuff thing. So, it's all on my blog. Ooh, focus. And it's going to be backwards. Why did I think that was a good idea? Anyway, so I thought about what do I want to say with my final piece? Who is my intended audience? What type of piece do I want it to be? So do I want it to be a painting? Do I want it to be a sculpture? Do I want it to be an installation? And on the day, all I thought was I'm tired and I want to go to bed. But that's not a good attitude to have, so I cracked on with it. My head's a bit all over the place, so I wrote down the themes that I've looked at so far, and I did a mind map of the human form because I like the human body. I find it intriguing because there's just so much to it. Humans are amazing. They're just, everyone is unique and everyone likes different things. Yeah, so I looked at things like anatomy because I like science. So like the skeletal structure, organ structure, like sports, how that affects the body, different sort of systems, sexual stuff, so like sexual reproduction, sexual organs, stuff like that. I then sort of mind map things to do with sort of gender clothes, gender conformity, gender confusion. The mind map was a bit all over the place because in my head everything sort of links together. So like sexualization of stuff, you can sexualize different stuff to do with gender. So like makeup can be quite sexualized, stuff from your childhood can be quite sexualized. So like dolls are quite sexualized, but kids don't really realise. Boys will be boys. So sort of rape culture, again, that comes back to like sexualization, makeup, cosmetic surgery. Again, that links back to sort of gender conformity, stuff like that. This isn't really going to make sense to anyone. This is more for me wrapping my head around stuff. The mind map was a mess, but it was just my brain coming onto the paper. Looking at stuff like deformity and genetic differences. This was sort of linking on from anatomy. So you've got things like the freak shows, like mermaids, bearded ladies, different extremes, so like tattoos, obese people, but then looking at things like eating disorders, which again links to like taboos, but again that can link back to sort of gender, transgender, porn, stuff like that, which again can go back to like obesity, different genders, transgender. Again, everything links in my brain. I don't know if it does for everyone else, which is why I found it really hard to pick a starting point, because all my ideas lead into different things and then I end up with this massive thing that can just go on forever because everything links together. I also sort of looked at fetish and stuff. Then I did a collage of female representation in magazines because I find it interesting how they're sort of geared towards women, but most of the imagery in them I think sort of geared towards men. So you've got things like the biting the lip. Again, I think it's sort of geared towards men because men like that stuff unless you are a woman who likes it. which you do you. Again, sort of like red lip. Men tend to like, I like Helen Mirren, so I put her in there. Or they're just sort of, magazines are really weird. They put you down and then bring you back up again. So, Tragedy Led Me to My Silver Fox. You sort of read it and you feel sorry for the woman. Because, I don't know, something really bad happened for her. And then she's like got an older man and you think, yeah, good on you. But you sort of have a go at other people for these massive age gaps. They're really weird. Magazines are weird. I don't like them. And I got like other bits and bobs, like Sexy Woman. Nothing about that makes me want to buy the swimming costume. He waited 45 years to ask me on a date, now we're married. Karen Wilson, 59, had no idea the boy she ignored in school was her future soulmate. Why would you read that crap? Quick and healthy tacos. There's a lot of stuff about like losing weight. I then looked at sort of gender stereotypes. So this was quite interesting. So like when someone says doctor or surgeon or a politician, you instantly assume it's male. But if you were to say female doctor or male nurse, it actually slows down your brain. So it takes your brain longer to process information afterwards. So violation of gender stereotypes triggers N400. And people are more accepting of females in male roles than they are of men in female roles. I found it interesting, but not interesting enough to do a whole project on, according to the little smiley face I put next to it. Hypersexualization and fetish based on gender inequality. That was pretty cool. Oops, dropped my headphones. But it was mainly of different ethnic backgrounds, and I'm not really in that category, and I don't really have a lot of experience with it, so I can't particularly comment on it because it doesn't happen to me and I don't do that. So I can't particularly comment. It was interesting to read, but again, you can't do a project if you don't really have experience in it, because you can't comment on stuff you don't know about. Sexual desire, that was pretty interesting. It was actually really interesting. Telling you all about like the science behind it. Sexual desire as early as 9 years old, but no motivation for desire. So like you have it, but you have no motivation to carry out your desires. Women place larger emphasis on interpersonal relationships because they're taught to repress sexual feelings. Males have a social acceptance of their sexual desires and they have casual sexual behaviour. 1 in 3 American women experience no sexual desire. That was really interesting, and I also looked a bit into evolution, where males have a stronger desire to reproduce with multiple women to like make their gene pool bigger. So if they have sex with like 3 women, they then have 3 offspring, and if they're children, like it just spreads. Whereas women don't really need to do that because they can have multiple children with the same guy. Yeah. And a genetic link to homosexuality, there isn't one, but I drew my version of the gay gene. It looks like a penis, because why not? In this sketchbook, I tried to do more visual communication. It didn't really work out that much because I did like bigger pieces. There is more drawings in here though, so I'm pretty proud of myself for that. fear of sexuality. This is pretty interesting because I do notice that quite a lot. Like, it is really taboo to talk about sex unless you are a guy, and talk about things like menstruation, periods, that's the same thing. Greek and Romans were known for their sexuality, but in the UK it's just not talked about, it's taboo. Lots of misconceptions are passed down, frightened to be themselves, so they oppress others. One article said women get emotionally attacked after sex, whereas men just want a quick shag. I found that funny, so I wrote it down. Bi people tend to feel forced to pick a side, and a label seems more daunting than to identify as gay, which is quite true, because when you say that you're bi, there is sort of the stigma around like being greedy, or you haven't found the right guy or girl, or you're just going to go and cheat on everyone. So I do get what he means. I was going to look into sort of sexuality and how it links to gender, but it is so big, and I don't necessarily think I'm comfortable enough with my own at the minute to explore it that much, so I don't really want to give myself an existential crisis. Sex and taboo, so sort of talking about the same stuff again. Sex sell. That is really weird. This is just rambles again and thoughts, 'cause I'm trying to clear my head and I'm saying the same stuff again. Sex is taboo, like you can't talk about it in real life, but you can see it on screens and everyone loves it. Like obviously you've got porn sites, and teenagers will talk about other people's sex lives, but they can't talk about their own. And it's just really, really weird. Like you'll talk about it in a movie and be like, oh my god, yeah, it's great. But, or like, oh my god, did you hear that Molly from English did so-and-so with Jack? Oh my god, what a slag. But you can't talk about your own, because then you don't want to be labelled slag. Or like you'll watch it on TV. You get embarrassed if you watch it with your parents, but on TV it's great. Taught to keep it private, but the media exploits it. Apparently the romance fiction industry gets $1 billion every year. And I looked at a guy called Ernest Becker. He was really interesting because men need to feel heroic, but they still need like God and people like that. And love and sex is heaven-like. And when you have sex, it basically makes the man a hero because the women basically worship them. And it was really interesting because like having sex sort of takes you back to your primal instincts, but we're trying to be like civilized and say that we're not animals. So we chastise sex and say that it's bad because we want to be like big, bad, we're not animals, we're civilized, we're not like these monkeys. So if you have sex, you're basically like a monkey. It was actually really interesting, and I actually think I want to do a project on that. Paper. That's a really interesting. I can't do it for FMP because it's too late now. But I want to do a project on that. That's not a pen. And Denial in Death. Why was it called Denial in Death? And it was basically like, we're so scared of death that we will do anything to feel alive, which is why we have the sex. But when we have the sex, but when we have sex, we feel like animals. So then we feel ashamed of ourselves because we've reduced ourselves to like this animalistic pleasure, and we shouldn't, because we are superior. And John told me, and I think Jacob did as well, where the more civilized we get, the more uncivilized we become, and I really, really like that. Which reminds me of like the Minotaur stuff I looked at later. Then I looked at Dr. Kate Lister and a history of breastfeeding as a devil. That's like devil milk. I quite like that. Don't know why. Blue boobs are funny. And again, that was really interesting because it led on to like changelings, and angry breast milk equals angry babies. Angry milk causes infant death. And it reminded me of Shakespeare when Lady Macbeth calls upon the spirits to take her breast milk and replace it with poison. And I thought about it at the time at GCSE, but it's really interesting to like think of a woman who you obviously think of like giving birth, having babies, being sort of nurturing, and replacing one of like her human functions, which is to nurture, and replace it with something so, I guess, vile and violent and deadly. Like, you're meant to raise a baby with your milk, not kill it. And Satan fed from witches, the left boob. But it's really weird, like, other cultures, so like Egyptians, the Romans and the Greek, so sort of the older cultures, actually believed that breast milk was really good, so they used to actually drink it to like make them healthier. They thought it would rejuvenate old men, but as you get like later, so sort of when Christianity became more of a thing, sort of 18th century, it becomes bad when sort of men start to take over. And I think it was Lister or another site that I looked at where it's actually because they're jealous of women's ability to like give life. Men believed that the ability to create life and nurture like a human being, like they were terrified of it. How comes you can create a life form? Isn't that like God's job? How comes they can do it? Why can't men do it? If men are meant to be almighty, powerful, God's favourite, why can't they create something so important? And it was usually homosexuals and bisexuals who were persecuted as witches. Oh yeah, men intimidated by the power to give life. So they actually used to turn on like midwives and people like that. And I did like I called it the witch trials, and I did a like mini performance where I put blue paint in some condom boobs to sort of bring over the rat shed idea, and I squirted it at two devils. I really, really liked the outcome, and I'd quite like to do something like that again. I'm not sure how I could bring it over. Condom boobs. Condom boob mazes. Old ideology and modern culture. Yeah, I looked at a lot of ideology in the modern world is based on old ideology. So a lot of it is based on Christianity, and that hasn't changed since the book was written. And everything's meant to change as time goes on. So laws are meant to change with the world. Technology changes as we advance. But laws, I've just said laws and Christianity, religion, stuff like that doesn't change. It's exactly the same as it was hundreds of years ago, and it shouldn't be, because we're different people, we're different generations, we have different ideas, we have different values, the world is different. And I personally think that things should change. Like, if you look in the Bible, a lot of it is men good, women should just suffer and do what men want. But the world we live in now is very different to that. But if we're going by religion, it just contradicts itself. And that's what I was sort of going for at the beginning. I wanted to sort of point out that, not necessarily say, hey, your religion's bad, just sort of point out, like, why are we following these really, really old rules when we're trying to get equality? Your books aren't geared for equality, and we're moving towards a world where equality is needed and wanted. But if we're going by your rules, it's just not there. So if everything else has to change, like technology and like workplaces and stuff like that, then maybe they should change too. More on witchcraft. They're not changelings. So like they're little babies that fairies basically kidnapped and were replaced with little ugly things. So fairies take human spirits to the fairy realm and leave unwanted fairy babies in the place. And these little fairy changelings were ill-tempered, they had very dark eyes, they were wizened, they grew a lot quicker than normal babies. They had long bony arms and legs and a full set of teeth. And it was actually really sad because people used to be really mean to them. They used to like bind them up really tight so they couldn't move and leave them out in the cold, rain, wind, or they'd like throw them in the fire and burn them to death just because they were different. There's a Bridget Clary is a rhyme thing. Are you a witch or are you a fairy? Are you the wife of Michael Cleary? Basically, Bridget took ill in a harsh winter and Michael was convinced she was a changeling. So he basically like burned her and just killed her in a really horrible way, beat her, drowned her, and then burnt her in the stove and then put her in a really shallow grave. And usually it was like babies with disabilities, mainly boys, because statistically boys are more likely to have disabilities or visible differences when they're born. So a lot of boys were accused of being changelings and they would be killed in awful ways. So I sort of led on from that. And I did think of a changeling. Where the hell has it gone? Changeling. No, don't look at me. There we go. Changeling performance, where it's a bit like a commercial. Where it's like, are you fed up of being like ugly? Drink some angry milk. Go to sleep. No, are you tired of being beautiful? Drink some angry milk. Go to sleep beautiful. Wake up ugly. Get better with age type thing. And then it's just really ugly baby when it wakes up and it's just like got blue milk draining from its eyes and stuff like that. This was the witch trials. Ow, hit myself in the face. Witch trials thing. Because I was trying to communicate more visually, because a lot of my sketchbooks are just writing, and apparently that's not how fine artists do it. I then started to look at religious persecution of women. So things like female genital mutilation, 2 million girls are subjected to it, and they're like physically restrained by family members. It's like a rite of passage. You're finally a woman now. And again, I decided not to go down that route because I am a white British. I'm not really a Christian, but I was raised Christian, and we don't do anything like that. And again, I can't really comment on it because I haven't experienced anything. I can point out and say it's bad, but I haven't gone through it. Again, same with like China or India. So in China, it has the highest number of missing girls, because if a girl is born, they just leave it. They prefer sons so they can like pass their businesses down and carry on the family name. They had a one-child policy in 1979, and if they had a girl, they would just kill it or like leave it outside in a dustbin. Really awful stuff. And again, I can say, look, this is bad, but I don't have any experience, and to make a project, you have to have some sort of personal experience to make the project. I don't know how to word it. Because if somebody came up to me and said, why have you done this? Because I think it's bad. You can't really do that, because yeah, it's bad, but I don't have any personal experience. I can't be making a profit off other people's badness. I don't know how to word that, so I'm just going to leave it like that. I looked at the Bible. I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She is to keep silent. "9 million women estimated to die in the witch trials." And I found a really good quote from Rosemary Ruther. Ruther? How many times must I forgive my husband for breaking my bones and battering my body? The male is taken to be the normative representation of the human species. And I find that really interesting, because a lot of women in the church sort of have to stay with their husbands no matter what. Like, once you're married, you're married, and if you get divorced, you're shunned from the community because everyone sort of takes your husband's side, and it's really unfair. Even if he is sort of battering you and breaking your bones, because he's your husband, you married him, for better or for worse. You have to forgive him. Forgiveness is in the Bible. God forgives him, so you should be able to. So I did like a silent... No, stop. I think it's because I'm pale. Stop. There we go. And then I thought of doing like a triptych. Why did I want to do a triptych? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Because obviously in the Bible, women are evil. So to see no evil, I was gonna like paint a picture of a man. Hear no evil, it was gonna be like a male voice. And then hear no evil was gonna be a male voice. And then to speak no evil, I was gonna have like male related things. So like man, dude, bro, boy, truck, beer. And like in the triptych, it was going to be like male associated things, so like trucks, cars, beer, mechanic stuff, with the dude in the middle. And that was going to be my triptych, because triptychs are usually associated with I never got round to it because I didn't really want to go down the religious route because I'm not really religious. Looked at Pandora's box because obviously she's such an evil person. How dare she ruin the world? Even though Satan, who's a dude, tricked her into doing it. Three Wise Monkeys. Again, the see no evil, hear no evil. Then I got told to look at Rachel McLean. Absolutely love her work. This is the performance idea for the Stacey and I called him Chad because that's obviously a really white dude name. And Stacey and Chad have replaced Adam and Eve, like the modern Adam and Eve. And originally it was going to be kind of like a game show. Where it's like one of you's worthy, one of you's not. One of you's worthy, one of you's not. Go ahead and take it. The one who eats the apple saves humanity. So obviously, like, you think the voiceover's God, but it's actually Satan. And it's just because Chad is really stuck up and big-headed that he actually tricks Stacey into eating it because he belittles her. Like, you're on a diet, you should eat the apple. I'm already worthy. So even if you eat the apple, you won't be as worthy as I am. But I was speaking to John, and he said it might be better to have no voiceover. So originally I was just going to have them like, oh, look at me, I'm going to eat the apple. And I thought, well, actually, I'm going to look at what the Bible actually says about sort of creation. And when I was reading it, it's going to sound weird, but I actually really liked what he said. But I guess whoever wrote it, God, I guess, I really liked what they said. So when you eat from this tree, your eyes will be opened, you will know good and evil. Then what have you done? I will make you pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labour you will give birth to children. Your desires will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So I decided to actually use the Bible as my voiceover because some of the stuff he says is just absolutely ridiculous. And it actually turned out really well. I really, really liked that video. It's only about a minute long, but it took me absolutely ages to film. I really like Stacey. Stacey's such a good character. Looked at Lilith. That didn't really go anywhere, but I like the fact that people just think this female demon's like going around and making men unfaithful and seducing everyone. Then I looked at how to edit things on iMovie because I'm really crappy with computers. Possible ways to present things. It's like a photo booth where you go in and you're like, yeah, I'm a dude, or like I'm a woman, I'm gonna clean pots. So depending on how you pose, depends if you get like, it was originally going to be two booths, one for a boy, one for a girl. You go in and you pose, and then I force a gender role upon you. But I didn't really like the fact there was gendered entrances. So later on, then the coronavirus hit. So coronavirus research, more stuff for the photo booth. But because of the coronavirus, I decided it wouldn't be a very good idea because it was like, yeah, you could do it, but you'd have to either make loads and loads and loads of like paper ones that you could just dispose of afterwards. But in my Odd Sockist manifesto, I wanted to reduce waste and only make waste if necessary. So yeah, you could wipe things down, but you can't trust people to do that after every time. And it just not a good idea anymore. Then I looked at gender troubles because I still wasn't sure what I was looking at. I knew I was looking at sort of femininity, so I looked at Gender Troubles by Judith Butler, and she was talking about drag, and Is drag the imitation of gender, or does it dramatise the signifying gestures? Does being female constitute a natural fact or a cultural performance, or is the naturalness constituted through discovery performative acts that produce the body through and within the categories of sex? And I really liked that. Is gender a performance, or is it something we're born to do? And this really stuck with me because gender is something I've struggled with. So this is something that I focused on, and I did a performance where I used clay. I didn't quite do this because I just did my face. There we go. Focus. Oops. I decided to just do my face after looking at Olivier de Sagazan, and I used the homemade clay and I put it on my face and I smushed it around, and then I used a palette knife to like carve in like male things, and I used paint, and then I stuck nipples on my eyes because I didn't have pasties or anything like that to do my full body, and obviously I'm at home because of the coronavirus, so I had to adapt and improvise, turned into Bear Grylls. But I like the idea of gender as a performance. I sort of, not necessarily strayed away from it, but I didn't focus on it as much as I don't know, this is why I'm confused. I don't know. But I liked that, and that's where I went. Who Was Afraid of Contemporary Art? I read that. Then I started to look at the nude form, because obviously in the media and stuff like that, the female body is absolutely disgusting, it's trash, it's gross, but the male body's fine. I actually really couldn't find anything other than we don't want the female body to not be a sexual object, and obviously if women start walking around naked, it becomes less sexual because we're used to it. So we have to keep it covered, so when it finally is naked, we get excited by it. So places like Facebook and Instagram, they won't allow, so like artists on Facebook and Instagram, they will not allow a photograph of a female nipple, but you can have a painting or a sculpture of a nipple, or you can have a photo if the nipple is removed. But you can have a male nipple. So a lot of people were doing like female breasts with male nipples put on top of them, which I think is quite funny. So that's what I did for my performance. I used a male nipple and like put it over my eyes, because male nipples are allowed to see the world but female nipples aren't. Then looked at burlesque, because that's it's very feminine, it's alluring, it's very sexualised, but again, they're obviously not like naked, but it's as close to naked as women are allowed to get without being absolutely disgusting. Even though a lot of people, especially in America, find it very disgusting because America's very Christian. Then looked at satire, because people like Sarah Lucas, so I've got like my references on the wall. Sarah Lucas uses a lot of satire. Who else does? Martin Creed does to some extent. So I was looking at like, to make something look ridiculous, you have to embarrass yourself but sort of humble and discredit something. Humour, irony, exaggeration, ridicule. Humour makes you happy and it's a way to deal with pain. I then looked at sort of a transgender lady. What was her name? What was her name? She did a TED Talk. Paula Stone Williams. And when she was a man, she could basically do what she wanted. And in her industry, she got where she wanted, she could do what she wanted. And then when she transitioned into a female, her sort of male privilege just disappeared. And she got like trans privilege. But men started to mansplain things to her, and it was just so weird. So she said in one of her TED Talks, I said, "I'm sorry, sir, but 2 + 2 is 4, to which he spluttered and told me it was 5. I mean, what do I know about maths other than how long it takes to make a sandwich?" And I found that absolutely hilarious. I was going to look at androgyny, but forgot, apparently. Other installation ideas where, like, you put your face in things. So, like, you put your face as the nipples, or you just look out and your eyes are the nipples. I had a bit of an obsession. Ooh, face is gone. I had a bit of an obsession with... Had a bit of an obsession with nipples becoming eyes and eyes becoming nipples. Ignore like the skin tone, I hadn't done acrylic painting in a while, but for some reason I really like this. There's just something intriguing about it. I did a video piece where I actually put my eyes on my nipples. Yeah, and then I looked at Audrey Beardsley. He was awesome, way ahead of his time, and did this. That's the pattern for that I messed up. You get the gist. Not my favourite thing in the world, but it's alright. Sarah McLean, artist in residence. My female nipples so offensive. I couldn't find anything on that other than people just want them to be offensive, therefore they are. Somebody said, no, put them away, and everyone was like, yeah, put them away. And that's usually how things go. I then was thinking about like the rainbow project that everyone's doing in quarantine and potato prints, and I was like, person potato print. Oh, why did I throw it on the floor? Oh. Did this, which started a whole collections of things which I really liked. Kill Your TV, which was really good. These, oops, magazine clippings are falling out. So this was the putting nipples, no, eyes on the nipples, and like how you could, oh my god, I broke it. And how you could do it. So originally it was going to be like you were on a date with the person and you zoom, like you're looking at their face and they've got nipples for eyes, and they're like, excuse me, my eyes are down here, which obviously is a take on my eyes are up here. So it sort of subverts the usual of you are forced to look at the breasts, you have to. So it sort of desexualizes them in that way, while still sort of sexualizing the nipples because you're not allowed to look at them. Yeah, I quite like it. I might do that if I can figure out how to do it properly. And I was just testing out like colours. And then for that, I'd exhibit it in a thing where like you walk into a room and there's just like a giant bra, and then you bra, and like you walk underneath the bra, and that's where the sort of body is with the eyes. And then you're only really allowed to see boobs and nipples and stuff inside sort of big galleries. So I had a piece called Gallery Ready, where you wear the galleries on your breasts, and I did a piece for that, and I quite liked it, but again, it didn't really go anywhere beyond that. I wasn't really sure how to present that. I wasn't sure where to put it. It was just an idea that I went with. Sexuality Sells. It sort of reminded me of the Sophie and the Eyeball Bops by McLean. Consumerism. Looked into a bit of performance painting, Brenda Mag, You Can't Show That. That was really interesting. So they hired like a private gallery space, and some of their pieces had been censored, and they were like, it was about this couple who showed their rocky relationship and how it sort of, they made up through sex and stuff like that. And while the pieces were explicit, they were emotional, and they were so much more than just porn. If it was porn, it would have been put on Pornhub, not in an art gallery. And the curator was like, no, you have to take them down. They're not even allowed in the 18+ section. They're too graphic. And it was just really interesting because it discredits your artwork. It says, no, that's not artwork. You're not allowed to show that. It's disgusting. And being told your artwork's disgusting is disgusting in itself. And what makes it different? Why is that photograph any different to a Monet nude or a Greek statue? Like, why is it any different? Is it because it's a photograph and it feels more personal because anyone can take a photograph?
She's in there with you?
Yeah. Like, what? Whatever, I'm still going. It just seems quite hypocritical. So, like, photorealism is banned on Twitter and stuff like that. Then I looked at Climb by... I'm not going to try and pronounce her name, so I'll let you read the name, even though it's backwards. I did a YouTube video on it anyway. And I, like, stuck my finger in a thing and made little... made things. Oh, I'll pull my neck now. Oh, that's upside down. How do YouTubers do? I made this guy. And like this thing. It sort of reminds me of like a... That's its butt. No, stop going white. There we go, like... Yeah, it reminds me of a Greek statue. And I used that like toilet roll and stuff. That was really cool. I enjoyed making it. I like making sculptures. These are like the potato print things, but these are nipples. Stacey idea, because I was looking more into more taboo femininity. Sorry, I have the dog now. So, an idea where you like use, because like there's beauty trends where they use like fruit to do their makeup and stuff like that. And fruit can be quite phallic or feminine. So obviously like oranges are vaginas and bananas are penises and stuff. And I put like paint in it, and when you opened it and applied it, so it was like period blood on my face, which I did again. Like the body prints I did one where I used leftover paint and used the blood paint to make myself into a man, which I really liked, and I put Shakespeare over the top, which was quite a feminine piece, quite a feminist piece. I really liked that, but I wasn't sure how to continue it, because I wouldn't really call myself a feminist, even though most of my work is. You're just gonna have to deal with the dog crying. Kairos, stop. Then I looked at Judy Chicago, which is the menstrual blood thing, which is what I've just talked about. Maybe I need to stop getting ahead of myself. And I really liked her Woman House piece, where it's just like a bathroom full of menstrual products, and Janine Antoni, who was a minimalist artist who did sort of a lot of work where it's the female form absent. I don't know why I've got her here actually. The vagina is a source of greatness. The 1960s feminist art movement was a really good time for artwork like that, and a lot of women were, especially in performance art, it was really empowering. And then just a little, because why not? I was looking at Sarah Maple as well. Blood in art and other bodily fluids, I suppose. Artists who use bodily fluids are really part of the drive to make art physical and real that is deeply written into the art history of the Christian world. So again, I find it quite interesting how it links. So there was this woman who claimed to have like wiped Jesus's forehead as he's carrying the cross, and there's like just a print of his face on this cloth, even though she like just dabbed the blood, and it's really deeply ingrained into it. It's like they use pee and blood and sweat and spit and stuff. Blood represents purity and impurity, sacredness and profanity, life and death, body art, performance art, ritual art. So after looking at Woman House and then looking at like blood and rituals and stuff like that, I thought about doing a Woman House inspired piece. It was going to be a performance, but my mum was working in the kitchen and I couldn't figure out how to do it, so when she stops working for the summer I might try and do it again. But it was basically a piece about the monotonousness of stereotypical female life, where it was like, oops, there we go. So like the Stacey does it and she's like ironing, and then as the sheet goes down it gets all crumpled on the floor. Who's this? Other Stacey's obviously come down and they're also doing other sort of monotonous female tasks like cleaning, cooking, looking after children. Then I started looking at string and sort of Frida Kahlo, because I was looking at string and then I was going to do like string moustaches and unibrows. So I was looking at sort of the fates and how they spin the thread of life, and they sort of choose when to kill you, I guess. And I really liked that, because it's a female role. Like they spin the thread of life, like you associate women with sewing and making things, but also you associate them with giving life because they give birth. These three women give birth to everyone essentially, but I find it really strange that these women are given such an immense task. Like why would you give a woman such a massive task as to decide the fate of everyone, God and mortal, because obviously they're Greek. Like where is it? Zeus has no control over what the fates do, and he had to accept the fact that his son died. Like, he had no control over what the fates did, then the fates killed his son. And I just find it really interesting that women are sort of looked down upon, and yet they're given such this immense task as to decide the fate of the whole of humanity. And yet they're still given like really stereotypically women roles. Shush, baby. And then I started looking into the labyrinth and how it symbolises a passageway into the human realm and into the invisible realm of the divine feminine. And again, it's interesting because it's feminine. You'd think you'd go into like this really masculine realm because men, but no, it's feminine. And it's guarded by a minotaur. And minotaurs are really, really interesting because obviously like they're half man, half bull, but they symbolise minotaur, fear of death and animalistic urges of the uncivilised passions which is under the surface of all of humanity. And I absolutely love that, because when you think of men, you do sort of think of like these animalistic sexual urges. Women have it too, don't get me wrong, but you usually associate it with men. And I really like that because it sort of links back to Ernest Becker and sort of the male animalistic urge to mate with all these women, but also how if we have sex, it brings us back to our primal animalistic selves that we don't want to be because we want to be godlike. It's really interesting to see everything links again. So I definitely want to look back at that, but again, it's too late to look at it now because it's the end of FMP. But I definitely want to look at it. And labyrinths I love, because although they're full of twists and turns, there's actually only one way to go. Unlike mazes, which are meant to confuse you and get you lost, labyrinths is only one way to go. Even though you may think you're lost, you're not. Labyrinths, there's only one way in, there's one way out. Mazes, you will get lost. In labyrinths, you can't. And in psychological terms, labyrinths are to release you from the confine of rational linear thought, because we don't psychologically lose our way, just psychological disassociation from rational thought. And that's cool because we're artists, we like to be creative. Then I looked at the divine feminine. Both male and female have a role to fulfill. So, women, the divine feminine is often subtle and neglected. Hermetic principles, one of them is gender. Union of opposites makes something new. Everyone has female and male aspects. Humans are true hermaphrodites, which again goes back to gender and androgyny, stuff like that. Principles of gender. Sex is merely a manifestation of gender on a plane of organic life. Which again, everything is so interesting because gender and sex isn't really real. Everyone is just sort of a blob of nothing and we choose what we want to be. So it links back to the gender, and with the sort of... That's a minotaur that I did with like the body press thing. These are what I did to show like... Although we have a body, a sex assigned body, gender is what we want it to be. From those, you can't really tell what gender I am. I assigned a gender to that piece. You can't tell what I am, even though that's my body. It's a self-portrait. You can't tell. And I really like that. But then I started looking a bit at the minotaur because I found them really interesting. I was like, no, you need to do a separate project on that. There's just a face print. Then I did, shush baby, this, which I absolutely love, because again it's the face print but done in stitch, because linking in the thread, and the thread, more visual communication. Using the thread is really interesting because it takes up so much time and effort, whereas the other one doesn't. It's just slapping paint on my face and pressing it and you've got an imprint of that moment in my life. Whereas with this one, that is a moment in my life with the print, but it's taken so much longer to capture that moment. Like, this is one I'm working on, but it's taken longer because I'm trying to get a more accurate thingy. This is just a self-portrait. I'm dabbling in different styles. I really like that. Then I was thinking about a rope sculpture, and stop, focus. There we go. Because I looked at Eva Hess, and I really like her later work where she does, I'm too pale, I'll throw off the white balance. Eva Hess, where she does focus on rope sculptures. And I was thinking originally just about making boobs, like her ring around a rosy, but having sort of a rope that comes off with a pair of scissors to sort of symbolise the rope of life being cut, and then there'd be like a performance to go with it. So like this would be painted white because it's milk, and the milk is the life source. Bear with me. Milk is the life source because obviously you give it to your baby to keep it alive, and then once you cut the milk supply, that baby dies essentially. If it's a girl, this is the performance. If it's a girl, it dies. And then if it's a boy, it lives a happy, healthy life because boys are great. And then I started thinking about like umbilical cords, because obviously when the baby's growing, umbilical cords. And then that's when I started thinking about this. And then it goes back to the labyrinth, because in older mythology and stuff like that, the labyrinth was sort of like a womb where you were reborn. You'd go through a labyrinth to be reborn, and like the string was sort of like your umbilical cord. And then I got back to like my final piece, what do I want to say? And what do I want to include? Fates and thread of life. Women denied individuality, displaced from producer and becomes sign of male creativity. Metamorphosis into dying muse turns into individual ideal of quietly suffering femininity. Women reduced to basic role, birth giver. And this is like the fate, goes back to the fate, they could produce life. So shush baby, shush, shush. No. Dog has come to say hello. So I started to look at the womb and boobs. Shush, shush, shush. And babies. And again, I did like a sewing piece. Don't lick my ear. I did a sewing piece. I ran out of thread. But while I was doing that, I thought about, I am sewing the life into this baby. Because without the womb and the placenta, this baby has no life. You're sewing it into it. But sewing is painful. You're stabbing them. And like, pregnancy is painful, and if I was to take all of this thread out, you are left with holes in the paper. Those holes are permanent, so you're sort of not necessarily killing the mother, but you are hurting the mother to create this life. And that's why the fates are haggard old women, because you are draining their life to create a new life, and they do it loads because they're creating the whole of humanity, and it's tiring, it's tedious, they're being stabbed multiple times, and they've got all this thread and all these holes to create it all. And I like recorded it. It took me ages to get the set up because I like trying to get the angle above. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sculpture of the female torso with the breasts, and I'm going to make, the breasts are going to be rope with the milk coming out to link back to this. The milk's going to come out and there's going to be a hand cutting it with scissors, because they're cutting off the supply. And I think what I want to do with that is sort of make it so you can see like a video playing inside the breast. And that's going to be like, I'm not sure what the video is going to be, but it's going to be sort of, it's going to be some sort of aspect of life after this baby has grown up. And I think it's going to be the journey of a female, because I am female. Obvious, I think it's obvious. And then, but because it's in the breast and it's been cut, they're going to die. And the men in her life are going to sort of be joyous, because I really, really, really like the quote, "Metamorphosis into dying muse turns her into an ideal, quietly suffering femininity, and women denied individuality displayed from producer and become sign of male creativity." I love it. I don't know why, but I love it. I think it's really relevant. So I want to show that somehow. And in the womb, there's going to be a maze where this golden threaded baby is going to be born, and the golden threaded baby is going to be a boy. And I don't know if I'm going to do a video for that, but if I do, it's going to be like a McCartney, Creed, McLean, they all begin with them, type, like, not necessarily horror, but like crazy sort of lucid dream thing where this boy just wreaks havoc. Oh, my hand's shaking. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if I'll get it all done, but that's my idea, and now it's on camera, so I have to do it. I want to use like wire and rope, and Stacey's going to be like the mother, and I'm definitely going to use thread to do it. So yeah.